Okay, a very good morning, good afternoon and good evening from whichever location you are watching this video. And 15th September, it's a very special day, and that day is the Engineers Day, right? So I'm a software engineer by profession, and when we say engineer means you don't have to have an engineering degree. Huh? I feel so. Engineer means a person who does technical things, who repairs technical things, who fixes technical things, who designs technical things, right? It can be a bridge, it can be a building, it can be a machine, or it can be a software developer like us, right? So in this Engineers Day, right, this is a very special gift from one engineer to another engineer, right? So what is this special gift? This special gift is in this video. This is the video is a special gift. In this video, I'll be discussing about a very important question which comes up for seniors during architect interviews or during a senior level interview, and that question is, which design pattern have you used in your project, right? And with this gift also, I'm going to give you a couple of more gifts, right? If you go and if you share this video anywhere on your LinkedIn, right, and if you can send us a mail saying that I've shared this video on your LinkedIn or anywhere, right, I will give you 3 gifts out here. I will give you a C# interview question PDF which has almost 30 to 40 questions. I will give you an architecture interview question PDF with answers, right, with diagrams and nice explanations, wherein I have covered MVC, MVP, MVVM, Singleton Pattern, repository pattern, and many such questions out there with answers. And fourth, I will also be giving the source code which I am discussing on this video, right? So if you go and if you share this video on LinkedIn only, don't tag me on Facebook or anywhere, right? And this is my LinkedIn profile out here, the LinkedIn the LinkedIn address. You can go and you can tag me as well. So if you go and share there, you will get all these 3 gifts out there. And please note that after you share it, please send us a mail at questpond@questpond.com, or else we'll not come to know where to send these gifts, right? So let us start this video. Which design pattern have you used in your project? The purpose of this question here is that to test that do you understand some design patterns, have you used design pattern in your project or not. Now here the interviewer, it's very rare, 20-30% times it is possible that the interviewer can say that, okay, talk about interpreter pattern or talk about mediator pattern, right? But most of the time, what I've seen is, the interviewer throws the ball in the candidate's court and says that which design pattern have you used, right? Now most of the candidates, what they do is they go unprepared. They go unprepared out there, and then they talk some couple of patterns out there, which is very mundane, like Singleton pattern or factory pattern. And that also, when they speak, right, it does not show that conviction that they've used in their project, right? So I would suggest that if you're a senior person out there or a person who is looking for architect job, this question you should exactly know what to speak, right? So today in this video, I'm going to go and cover 5 patterns which I feel are very important, right? Which I would, if this question comes up, I'll speak about those 5 patterns. And what I've done is, all these 5 patterns, the way I have structured them is, I have a mix of GOF pattern and non-GOF pattern, right? Means I will first start with a non-GOF pattern, which is repository and unit of work. Then I will talk about a GOF pattern, which is Singleton pattern, which is talked a lot. Then I will go and talk about again a non-GOF pattern, which is CQRS, which is talked a lot. And the last one I will talk about again a GOF pattern, which is a factory pattern. So the way this whole video is structured, I'll be talking about 5 patterns, and the way the flow is that non-GOF pattern, GOF pattern, non-GOF pattern, and GOF pattern. You can see the image which is flashed on the screen. It will help you to understand that how the future roadmap would be, right? So so that is one part. Now before I go ahead with this video, one thing which I want to specify here is that whatever patterns I am discussing out here, those are my patterns, because my patterns means I have used them in the project, I know them, I have read about them, I have implemented them. But my patterns cannot become your patterns. You must be working in project, you must have used mediator pattern, you must have used facade pattern, you must have used iterator pattern. So please see that you don't have to talk about my patterns. The 5 patterns which I'm talking here are patterns which are discussed mostly in the market. But it is very much possible that you know some of the patterns and you are very confident, yes, I've used this pattern, then please speak about those patterns. Remember, because if you're speaking about those patterns which are used in your project, there's a high level of conviction, right? So before I proceed with this video, right, I would like to just talk about three things out here that whenever you are speaking about your own pattern, please make sure that these three things are part of it, right? Whichever design patterns you are thinking of projecting in the interview or speaking in the interview, right? See that it at least meets these three criterias: N, U, and P. N stands for natural, U stands for usage, and P stands for project. Let me go through it. Whichever design patterns you talk right in the interview, it should look very natural. It should not look artificial. Remember that this is a senior level interview, right? Try to convert that Q&A mode into a conversation, into a discussion. Once a Q&A gets into a conversation or a discussion, right, you are winning half of the battle, right? So whatever design patterns you are speaking, right, it should come out naturally. That is the first point. The second point is usage. In order that something should be natural, right, it should be used in the industry or in the projects, the usage should be high. For example, if you say that, okay, I use visitor pattern. Now, visitor pattern or like interpreter pattern, like which are used mainly to create compilers or mainly to create, some kind of a language parser or something, right? How many projects are out there? But if you say repository pattern, yeah, that's used a lot. Iterator pattern, everybody does a for each loop. Or if you say something like factory pattern, yes, right? So the usage in the industry should be high. So if the usage is high, right, then both of you guys can get connected. So if the usage is high, it will also look natural, right? And the third one, project. If you have used that pattern in your project, right, talk about it. Why? Because then definitely you can handle the cross questions properly and you have used it, right? It is your competency, right? So you can speak properly, you can handle the cross questions and so on, right? So whichever patterns you think to talk in an interview, it should look natural. It should have a high usage in the industry. And the third most important point is that if you have used it in your project, talk about it. Remember that if you have like 2-3 years of experience, right? And if you're working in a project, some or other design pattern you must have used, right? Just try to take those design pattern and talk in the interview. The first pattern, which I feel, is widely used in the industry as well as every project uses is the repository pattern. If you look around in the industry, right, most of the projects interact with databases. Most of the projects are almost like CRUD application, insert, update, and delete, right? So I feel the pattern, which I feel that every programmer should know is the repository pattern. So this pattern, definitely I feel that you should talk about it. Now remember, so what exactly is repository pattern? Repository pattern actually helps you to abstract and centralize the data access logic, right? So you can see here on my screen, you have this iRepository, right? Now this iRepository is out here, and at the back of the repository, it can be so basically it can be, so if you say this is the iRepository, you want to add a customer. So at the back, it can be a ADO.NET repository, right? A data access layer, or it can be an entity framework data access layer like this, entity framework customer, or it can be a file, it can be anything, right? So what repository pattern does is it actually helps you to create a higher level of abstraction over the data access layer, right? So I think this is the first pattern which I feel that you should be speaking in the interview. One more suggestion, which I would like to give here is that whenever you are talking about or whenever you are conversing about repository pattern in interviews is never use data access layer and repository vocabulary interchangeably. Data access layer is different and repository is different. Both of them are two different concepts. Data access layer actually focuses on the technical details of how to connect to the data source. For example, if you're using ADO.NET, you will say, okay, open the connection, give the connection string and so on, right? Use a command object. If you are talking about entity framework, you will be talking about mapping and so on. So right, when you say data access layer focuses on the technical details. While when you're talking about repository pattern, it is more of an abstraction over the data access layers. So repository pattern goes one step ahead. Remember this word data access layer, I remember that it was very famous during 2000 era, right? Like DAL, right? That word DAL. Let me know how many of you guys remember the word DAL, data access layer, right? So data access layer is more technical centric, while repository is more around the models, right? If you look at the code, right? In the code, you will see that we say iRepository of customer, iRepository of supplier. So it is more around the domain, while data access layer is more on the more from the technical aspect, right? So whenever you are using these vocabularies, be careful, or else what happens is, because see, remember, it's a senior level interview. I'm sorry that I'm repeating these terms again and again. In senior level interview, if you use these words interchangeably, it sends out a different message. It says that, okay, does he really know what is a repository, right? So don't use these words interchangeably. And remember, data access layer focuses on technical details, while repository is around the model. It is a one level above abstraction on data access layer. One more connected question which can come around repository pattern is that what exactly is a generic repository pattern? Now remember that generic repository pattern is not something really different. It is nothing but it is an extension. It is an extension over the repository pattern. So rather than creating separate interfaces for each entity, we can use the C# generic concept, and we can create just one interface, and that one interface you can reuse with multiple entities, right? So what I mean is that, you can see here, this is an I repository, and this is the T out here, the generic. So what this means is that this interface now I can reuse with any model. So if you look at the code out here, the code looks something like this: I repository of customer, I repository of supplier, right? So definitely everybody uses generic repositories only, right? But in the interview they can question you that what is generic repository. Generic repository is nothing but it is an extension to the repository pattern. So rather than creating separate interface and classes for each entity, you just use generics out there and create your interface. The other pattern, which looks to me very natural and very connected, is unit of work. If you talk about repository pattern is not complete without unit of work. If you think that repository pattern is the food, then unit of work is the salt. I know it is a very stupid quote, right? Okay. So basically, what does unit of work do? Unit of work helps you to implement and abstract transactions in repository. See, the way data access logic is different, right? ADO.NET has a different way of connection, and entity framework has a different way of connection. In the same way that transactions are also different. ADO.NET will use the transaction object, and entity framework will use dispose or something, to roll back, or dispose and save changes, to commit and so on. So both of them have their own way of dealing with transactions, right? So unit of work acts like an abstraction over these transactions, and then they can be integrated with a repository pattern, right? Also, this question can come in a different flavor. They can say that how did you implement transactions in repository? Then the answer is unit of work, right? So you can see on my screen out here, I have created an interface here called as I unit of work with some very basic methods like begin, commit, and rollback, right? And then what you can do is that here then you can say that, okay, I'm starting the I unit of work. Right now, again, as I've said, this unit of work at the backend, it can be ADO.NET transaction, right? At the backend here, it can be an ADO.NET transaction, it can be an EFDB context, right? Whatever, right? So we say, okay, begin the transaction. Now here, for example, this is customer and this is supplier, and you want that both of them should belong to one transaction. In other words, what you want is that either both of them commit, and if there are issues, both of them rolls back, right? So what you do is that you say, okay, here is a unit of work. You create a repository of customer and you set this unit of work. You create the object of the supplier repository. You set the unit of work, right? So the unit of work now gets weaved into those repositories, right? So you will say, okay, begin the transaction. If everything is okay, you will commit it. And if everything is bad, you will just say roll back out here, right? So again, this is one more pattern which I feel you can discuss in a very natural way. Unit of work, right? Now remember that, over here, if you see whatever code I am demonstrating, I am showing, right? This code is a pseudo code, or this code is a very higher level code. I have not really coded here a lot of things. I have not coded here the exact code of it, right? And I would suggest that if you want to really make sure that you understand, what I have done out there, right? I will say that please go through our learn design pattern step by step, right? Over here, what I've done is I've taken up a project, right? And I've explained each one of these concepts, right? I've explained repository, then I've explained repository with entity framework, repository with ADO.NET, right? So with that, you get an idea that how exactly it looks like, right? So because this video is from the interview perspective, so I don't want to mix both of them. So from the interview perspective, yes, that's the answer, right? From the interview perspective, what is unit of work design pattern? It helps to implement transaction. It helps to abstract transactions in repository. But when it comes to the details of it, right, I think it is out of scope of this video. Please go through this complete video series out there, right? There is one question which comes around repository pattern, and it's a very subjective question. And normally I have found that interviewer throws these kind of questions, to understand that do you really understand repository pattern or not, right? So the question is like, is repository pattern needed if you're using entity framework, right? Now there are two schools of thought out here. The first school of thought is developers, who follow best practices, and they think, yes, we need repository pattern because it provides a higher level of abstraction, it provides loose coupling, it helps us to do good unit testing, right? So those are the developers who understand the importance of repository pattern. But there is a second school of thought out here who says, no, like entity framework implements repository pattern, so why we have to do this again, right? And they feel that it is redundant. So the challenge here is that if you're not answering from the interviewer's perspective, he will feel uncomfortable. And definitely, there are many interviewers out there who would like to get into an intellectual discussion and who would like to see that do you have that broader mindset of understanding both the perspectives. So here is my perspective here. My perspective is that it is unfair to compare entity framework with repository pattern. Why? Because see, repository pattern is a design pattern, while entity framework is a data access technology. It connects to SQL Server, it connects to Oracle, and so on. And the context, or I will say scope of entity framework is only across heterogeneous RDBMS. So let us say that if you want to have loose coupling between RDBMS, for example, if you want to go and say that, okay, like let me go and switch from SQL Server to Oracle, then it's a matter of just going and changing, one or two lines of code. So that is there. But entity framework cannot connect to files. Entity framework cannot connect to REST API. Entity framework cannot connect to blob data storage, right? They are more related to RDBMS. So the scope of entity framework is only heterogeneous RDBMS. But the scope of depository pattern is much higher. It is at a much 50,000 feet level. It talks about heterogeneous data access layer, heterogeneous data sources. So the data sources can be file, the data source can be in memory, or the data source can be RDBMS, the data source can be blob, the data source can be a REST API, right? So when it comes to repository pattern, they are at the 50,000 feet level. So it abstracts across heterogeneous data sources. Listen my word, watch my sentence, what I'm saying. It talks about heterogeneous data sources, while when we talk about entity framework, it talks about heterogeneous RDBMS, right? So I feel that yes, I would use repository pattern because it will help me to do loose coupling. It will help me to switch between data sources if needed, right? And the most important thing is that it will help me to do unit testing. Remember, when it comes to entity framework, it is very difficult to do unit testing and mock testing, right? So this is my perspective out here. So is the second school of thought of developers completely wrong, or like what is happening out there? So first thing is, developers who think that entity framework is a repository pattern, I think they're technically quite wrong, right? So I think over here, definitely, as I've already said, one is a pattern, one is a technology. Comparison is very difficult, right? But they are definitely right in certain aspect, in certain context, they are definitely right. For example, if let us say that I don't worry about unit testing too much, we all know that how many developers do unit testing, right? So let us say that unit testing is not really, unit testing is important. So I'm not sending out a message out here that unit testing is not important. I'm just saying that many of the projects, they just skip unit testing. Let me know if your project is always skipping unit testing. Write down in the comments below, right? I know that it is, when you're speaking officially, you should never say that you will not do unit testing. But let us say that you are not too keen in doing unit testing, or your team does not write unit test cases, right? That is the first thing. And the second important thing is that, let us say that you want to only connect to RDBMS. You want to only switch from SQL Server to Oracle, or from Oracle to something else. Or let us say that you want to only use SQL Server as RDBMS, right? In that case, I think that, well, the second school of thought are right, that repository pattern can be an overkill. But what I feel is that to maintain consistency, to maintain a kind of a uniformity, I feel that repository pattern is important, and it has become a de facto actually, right? So must be that developers who are thinking that we should not have repository pattern, they should once think over it, right? But here the goal is that how do you answer in the interview? I just put you two different perspectives. See, in interview, when you're answering such kind of questions, you shouldn't get into any kind of you should not have any kind of friction with the interviewer, right? So what you should do is that first talk about that right answer, saying that yes, repository pattern is needed and this and this and that, right? Now, if the interviewer is like too anti-repository, right, and he says no, but like I'm just using RDBMS, then you can tone down a bit. You can say that, okay, yes, I do agree that if you're just using a single RDBMS, you are not looking at decoupling, then must be, we can skip repository pattern, right? So remember, when you are talking in interviews, right, try to balance between the right and try to balance between what the interviewer is expecting. One of the key to success in an interview is that if you are able to satisfy the interviewer's ego, if you are able to satisfy the interviewer saying that like, hey, you are right, sir, aap to mahan ho, right? If you are able to do that, what happens is it releases in a body a chemical called as dopamine, and with that dopamine, it makes a person feel good. And it is very much possible that the interview results can be on your side. I'm not saying that you should always do that, but yeah, in some cases, there are some interviewers, because many times the interview becomes an egoistic interview, right? They want to, sometimes I feel that, some of the interviewers, they don't want to choose a candidate. They want to just try to see that, they win the questions, right? So if you're able to satisfy that, then it is great, right? So when you get such kind of subjective questions, give the right answer first, wait and pause, and try to see that what the interviewer is saying, and then accordingly you can change your stance, right? So I know that I talked a little bit technical out here, but I feel that it's an important point which you can consider while giving interviews. All of these questions, what you're seeing on the screen, all of these flavors of questions stresses the importance of unit testing. They stress the importance of mock testing. In repository, whenever repository pattern is discussed in interviews, right, the interviewer would like to know that do you understand the importance of unit testing in repository, right? So yes, definitely, when you're talking about repository pattern, remember we have this abstract interface, right? So because we have a higher level of abstraction over data access logic, and this abstraction is represented by a very generic interface, and because it is represented by a generic interface, definitely this unit testing becomes very easy when it comes to repository pattern. So remember, as soon as repository pattern questions are coming up, some of the interviewers would like to hear that unit testing, mock testing, isolated testing. So for unit testing, the interviewer wants to know that, do you know that how to go and do isolated testing? Do you know how to go and do mock testing? Remember that some seniors are very specific that unit testing should happen. They are fan of unit testing. So if they are fan of unit testing, right, and you are discussing about repository, he would like to see that you understand, for example, you understand isolated testing, you understand mock testing. For example, over here, what does mock testing means? You can see this is the home controller, and this home controller is using the repository object out here, and it is having a customer object out here. So now what you want to do is that you want to go and test only this part of the code. Whatever I have highlighted, only that part of the code you want to test, and you don't want to test this repository object because must be that it is all working right. Second, when you talk about parallel development, sometimes these objects are not ready also. So you don't want to go and depend on the third team out there saying that, because until they don't complete, you can't test it. That thing you don't want. So what you want is that, okay, you can test, or you can write your code whenever you are done, let us know, but we would like to still go ahead with the testing. So in that case, definitely the interviewer would like to know that, do you understand some flavors like MOQ, mock testing? Do you understand how to go and write a mock? Do you understand how to go and write a fake code out there, right? And do you know how to go and do the testing? So when it comes to unit testing, especially for repository pattern, the interviewer would like to know isolated testing, unit testing, writing of the MOQ code, and so on, right? So again, keep that in mind. Also, as I've already said, whatever I'm discussing out here, all this I put in this ebook out here, right? This is the ebook, and if you go and if you share this video anywhere, on your LinkedIn, right, let us know on this email that you have shared this ebook and shared this video, and we would like to give you this ebook free, right, as we have already discussed, right? So go ahead and share this video and take this ebook. So here, what I've done is, like, whatever questions I'm discussing, for example, I discussed about uh, do we need repository pattern? I have written a proper code, proper answer over here. Also like the unit testing answer, I have written a proper answer over here, right? So whatever we are discussing out here, right, I put down into notes out there, so you can take a printout and you can read along, right? And also remember that internally we have a architecture full interview question course. In that, whatever I'm discussing out here, I have actually demoed it. Here now it is very difficult to demo, right? That will make this video very lengthy. But there I've actually demoed it. I've written the code. I've given out more explanation. So internal the videos are more lengthy, right? So definitely this, whatever you are seeing on the YouTube, right? This video, this will help you to in general understand, how to answer questions around architecture, around repository pattern, around unit of work, around factory pattern, and so on. But when it comes to like really cracking the interview, I would suggest to look at once our internal course out there. That course you can get from Udemy. That course you can get it from by subscribing to the YouTube channel internally we have, which we have made for subscribers. Second, if you want, you can also go to our questpoint.com and you can buy the interview questions videos, right? Right. Or else if you want it free, watch here free, right? Ebook is out here. Try to revise it, but I would suggest, yes, see the internal videos because the videos are more in depth, right? Great. So those were the questions which are on repository pattern. Very, very quickly, let us just try to understand. So what were the questions we were discussing? So we said that in case of repository pattern, the questions are, interviewer can start with what is repository, data access layer and repository. Please don't get confused. Generic repository, you should be able to answer generic repository, right? How to implement transactions, unit of work, right? Do we need repository pattern? If we have a EF, also for that, keep an answer ready. And we talked about repository pattern and unit testing. That question also you should be knowing properly, right? So that was about repository pattern and unit of work. So as we discussed, this video format is, it will flip-flop between non-GOF pattern and a GOF pattern and a non-GOF pattern, GOF pattern. So we have covered first non-GOF pattern. Now we're going to go and cover a GOF pattern, then a non-GOF pattern and a GOF pattern. Now I wanted to cover only one non-GOF pattern in the first section, but I found that unit of work, just goes with that repository pattern like a king and a queen, or like a husband and a wife, or must be, you can say, pepper and a salt. It's like just together, so I just covered it. Right, so now we'll go and cover a GOF pattern. So we'll be focusing on Singleton pattern. And then after that, we'll take a non-GOF pattern and then again a GOF pattern and so on. So that is the format. So the next pattern which I want to discuss is the Singleton pattern. Now, the Singleton pattern, it is over-talked. It is overused as well, definitely when it comes to caching, when it comes to creating a global object. Singleton pattern makes a lot of sense. So yeah, over-talked, overused, abused, I don't know, an anti-pattern as well, right? Because the problem with Singleton pattern is that even, let us say, if you don't know to speak about Singleton pattern, either the interviewer will ask you about it, or it just comes out in the discussion, right? So this is the second pattern which I would say that you should keep ready with you, right? Now, one thing about Singleton pattern, what happens is most of the candidate, the way they answer Singleton patterns, they will say, oh, like static keyword, private constructor. They have these 2-3 words, they just try to put it ahead and they think that they know Singleton pattern. But I would suggest that you should little bit go in depth into Singleton pattern. Remember, this is an architect interview. This is a senior level interview. So you can't just throw tantrums on the air and say that static keyword and private constructor and something, right? A proper preparation is needed, right? So there are 6 questions. There are 6 questions around Singleton pattern, which I feel that the interviewer asks, right? Let us go through them. So all of these 3 questions we have already discussed, 6 questions, I'm sorry. All of the 6 questions we have already discussed on this software architecture and design pattern interview questions video, which we have uploaded on our channel. That link is also given in the description. I would suggest to go through that. So over here, the 6 questions which I'm talking about is, first thing is explain the Singleton pattern, definitely how to implement it. One of the favorite questions of interviewer is that explain between static versus Singleton. Many of the developers actually fail to answer about it. Thread safety, double null check, right? Lazy keyword. So I think, you can go and you can watch from question number 7, question number 6. So it's approximately 7 questions from question number 6 to question number 13. I would encourage you that you should watch the complete video, because in this complete video I have explained not only singleton pattern, I have explained MVC, MVP, MVVM, and layer architecture versus tired and GUI architecture pattern and so on, right? So I would suggest that you should watch this video if you're going for architect interview. But in this video, I will not be covering singleton because we have already covered out here, right? So very quickly, when it comes about singleton, you should be able to answer little bit in depth. You should know that why do we have this double null check? Why do we have this lock keyword, right? Why do we have this as a private constructor? What is the difference between the static keyword and singleton, right? So that's the kind of preparation you would need for singleton pattern, and I'm flashing all these 6 questions on the screen, and you can watch that video and you can revise for singleton pattern. The other pattern, which is a non-GOF pattern, which I want to discuss out here, is CQRS. Command, query, responsibility segregation. Now this pattern has come up into discussion for the last 3-4 years very aggressively. I think the rise of this pattern is because of the microservices architecture. I will not go into microservices now. It will open up a different Pandora box, but I feel that when it comes to microservices, this pattern is definitely very useful, or at least personally I feel that this pattern is kind of compulsory when it comes to microservices. So definitely this pattern is discussed a lot, used a lot, right? And I feel that this is the 4th pattern which you should be talking when the question comes which design pattern has been used, right? So what happens in CQRS? In CQRS, what we do is that we create separate classes for insert, update, delete, and read. I repeat here, CQRS is nothing but it's a design pattern, and here the goal is that to create separate classes, separate models, right, for create, update, insert, and read. Now, so that means, for example, let us say if you have a customer class, then you will create a create customer, you will create an update customer, you will create a delete customer, and you will create a read customer. So the first question, probably the interviewer can ask you is that why you have to create these separate classes. See, now what happens is, if you have just one model, for example, you can see on my screen, I am having just the customer model. Now, let us say when you're inserting data, when you're adding a new customer, so what do we need? We need the name, right? Definitely, we will like to have a created date and time. But you can see these 3 properties like the ID, we don't need it. We don't need the last updated date and time. Why? Because the last updated, it is not an update, it's an insert, right? And second, definitely inactive will definitely be true, but this flag is not needed. So while I'm adding a new record, I just need this one, this property, insert, and this property, right? So if you see here, I need this for insert, this for insert, and nothing else, right? So the other properties are not needed, right? Second, if you say, what do you need for delete? Nothing. You just need this property. The other properties are not needed during delete. What do you need for update? You will say for update, I need this one. I need this data, but this is not needed for update, right? And this is needed, right? So you can see that if you try to put everything into one class, then that class will just start becoming bigger and bigger. Now remember that the properties what I'm showing on the screen are very few examples, but then properties like is dirty, is new, all those properties start accumulating in that model, and that model becomes so huge, right? And these kind of models are termed as God class or God objects. In other words, you just keep adding out there, and it just becomes bulky out there, right? So the goal of CQRS is that create separate classes, because everybody's intentions are different. Remember, again over here, the interviewer would like to hear that S of the solid, right? Single responsibility principle, right? Single responsibility principle means one class should do only one thing at a time, right? In your life also, if you're told to do too many things, you get overloaded, isn't it? And it just bogs you down. Thus, in the here also, if you just take one class and say create be isme, update be isme, if you put everything into that class, it will just become huge, right? So again, here the interviewer would probably like to ping back to that SRP, single responsibility principle. and must be, if you talk about that also here, saying that yes, CQRS also follows single responsibility principle also, right? So the whole goal here is that create separate classes. You can see on my screen out here. So rather than creating like this one dot class, have a create customer, right? For a create customer, we don't need the ID, leave it. Have an update customer. For update customer, you need whatever are the properties. For delete customer and so on, right? So single responsibility principle, every class will do his own thing. The other question, which the interviewer can ask out here is, so what is the benefit of CQRS? I think the first benefit is definitely clean code, right? Or I will say rather segregated code. Why? Because every class is different. So if a developer is saying, I want to write an insert code, go to create customer. You want to write an update code, go to update customer. So this improves the readability of the code. This improves the maintainability of the code. That is the first thing. The second thing is also performance. See, when you are inserting data, right, inside your system, then let's say you have a customer. So you will say, okay, there is a customer and customer will have multiple addresses and addresses will have multiple phones. You can have a deep object hierarchy. But when you're reading, right, you would like to have a denormalized kind of one class, one single class, like a reporting class. If I ever use reporting classes, right, that is one of the way of looking at CQRS as well, right? That is, I think that reporting classes are the stepping stone to CQRS, right? So if you say you want to go and fetch data, right, then you have query customer. So for inserting data, create customer, update customer, delete customer. For querying, query customer. So query customer, what will happen out here? Your class will be flat structure. So if it's a flat structure, with one join, you can pull all the data and fill that class. So this definitely again improves performance. So remember, if the interviewer is asking you about what is the benefit, two things. One is the code maintenance improves, right? Readability improves. Why? Because every class has its own bucket now. Every operation or command has its own bucket. And the second thing is performance. Now, again here, the interviewer would like to also see that, do you understand that the complete CQRS is more command driven, right, or action driven? Means what happens if you see here? So at the end of the day, what is a create? A create is a verb. It is an action. Create customer, update customer, click there, double click, right click, print. So the way you should visualize CQRS is that, okay, so there is an end user out here, and the end user will send a command. He will say, I want to create. Okay, for this create, who will handle it? So for that you write a handler. So for this create, who will handle it? So there is a handler out there, right? You will say, okay, update. Okay, for update, who is the handler? So basically, there are two things out here. One is the action and who will handle it, right? If somebody says display customer, okay, display customer, who will handle it, right? So again here, the interviewer can ask you a question around what is a command and what is a command handler, right? So this is again an important question which can come up, right? Now, when you talk about CQRS, right, there are 5 to 10 questions. Remember that this is not a CQRS class. Please note, right? I would suggest that you should go and watch our microservices video, and also you can watch our architecture interview question video where I have covered, at least 10 to 15 questions on CQRS, which you can see. I'm flashing some of the questions. I'm flashing on the screen out here. But I would suggest that CQRS can be a tipping point for microservices. So as soon as CQRS comes into picture, the interviewer can go mad and ask you about microservices, domain-driven development, value objects, and all that, right? Service objects and so on, right? The complete DDT thing. But people who are our members, right, what you can do is that you can go and you can revise this microservices architecture training out here, where we explain all the things, and also you can go through the architecture interview question course. Also, you can go through C# interview question course, where we have covered some questions on CQRS, right? But here are some questions, people who want to revise. First thing, as I've said, that basically what is CQRS? Second, the benefit of CQRS. Second, they can go into that question of command and command handler, right? Also in CQRS, in every class has a GUID, a unique identifier. What is the purpose of it, right? So this is again one more question. You can have a controversial question where they will ask you that, okay, is CQRS compulsory? Can I go and do just with a model? So as I've said, the answer is yes. But then remember that the model can become bulky and huge and heavy, right? And one more question can come, are the models, means are your business models and CQRS same? They are not same classes. Remember, CQRS classes are more action oriented. Command, create, update, delete, double click. While models are actually domain objects, right? So both of them have a huge difference. Also, the interviewer can talk about mediator, right? Mediator is it is a third party package out there, which in C#, when it comes to C#, people use this package. What does this package do? So this is the mediator, you can see, right? So this package, what it does is it actually connects the command and the command handler, as I've said, right? So for create customer, there will be a create customer handler. For update customer, there will be update customer handler. Close accounts, there will be close accounts handler. Now there will be so many commands and so many handlers. So definitely you don't want to go and write a mapping code or something, right? So for that, you have this nice thing here called as mediator. The name itself says it mediates between the command and the handler. So this, again, some questions can come around this. Please watch my interview question videos where I've explained all this concept. At this moment, I'm just trying to go through, what kind of questions are there, right? The second, the other kind of questions which can come out here is around aggregate route, right? So specifically when you're talking about event sourcing, when you're talking about projections, right? This aggregate route comes to use a lot, right? So aggregate route is again a part of CQRS. Remember, aggregate route is not compulsory. Please note, it is not compulsory. Aggregate route and event sourcing and projections are not compulsory for CQRS. But there are many situations, where probably by using event sourcing or by using aggregate route, you can improve performance. So these are again some of the questions. And if you say yes, you are using event sourcing, then please note they will ask you about different event sourcing DB, what you have used, and so on, right? So we'll not go into this a lot at this moment because these are a little bit higher end questions. It can take time. And the goal of this video is to just talk about that, what kind of questions can come, right, if you talk about CQRS or if you talk about any pattern. So I would suggest everyone to go through this course out here, right, go into more in depth, right? So that is about CQRS and the questions around it. So we have covered a non-gov pattern, which is CQRS, and now we'll be covering factory pattern. So remember, we have covered two non-gov pattern first, repository and unit of work. Then we covered Singleton. Then we covered a non-gov pattern again, which is CQRS, and now we are covering a gov pattern, which is factory pattern. I feel that factory pattern is not only over-discussed, over-talked, but also I think it is very useful as well. I feel that when you talk about creating a decoupled architecture or a loosely coupled architecture, factory pattern forms the base of it. So I feel that, this pattern, if you are speaking in the interview, I'm sure that you can connect with the interviewer very easily, right? So let us discuss about this pattern, what kind of questions are asked around this pattern. So when it comes to factory pattern, there are like 4 or 5 questions which are asked out here. Again, like guys, whenever I'm saying these questions are asked means, as per my experience, where I'm taking mock interviews, where I'm taking interviews in the companies, I put it out there, or with my friends, whatever I discuss, those questions are here. So must be, these questions are not enough, there can be many scenario based questions. So if you know some of the questions, please put down on the chat below, or please put down in the comments, it will help the community to know that what kind of questions are asked. But here it is. Definitely the first thing, the interviewer can ask you is that what exactly is a factory pattern? Why do we need it, right? And most of the people, what they answer is that factory pattern actually centralizes the object creation. Now this answer is right. Factory pattern centralizes the object creation. But one very important message you need to send to the interviewer here is that when you centralize a new keyword, what exactly happens? So what is the implication of the new keyword? And if you centralize it, the big benefit what comes out is loose coupling. So that loose coupling thing should be expressed to the interviewer, right? So remember, when it comes to factory pattern, the interviewer with his full ear and eyes, he will be hunting. He will be seeing that, do you understand that what benefit factory pattern brings to the table, right? So very quickly, let us see with the example here. I'll try to explain. So, just previously we discussed about repository, right? So you can see this is the repository out here. So in the repository, I can have an entity framework customer repository, I can have an ADO repository, I can have a file repository, right? Now let us say you have an MVC application, you have thousands of controllers, right? So you want to use this repository out there. So here it is, So now what happens? In the home control, you will say, okay, now I want to go and do entity framework repository, right? Entity framework, EF customer repository, right? Okay. And And then let us say now this is the home controller. Let us say we have one more controller here. Let us say our customer controller here also will say, oh, like we have to go and use entity framework repository. And this way in thousands of controllers, you will go and say entity framework repository. And then tomorrow you say, no, like, can we go and change back to ADO.NET? Oh, then what? Again, you go out there and again you say, oh, like ADO customer here, ADO customer there, ADO customer everywhere, ADO customer in thousands of controllers, right? Means what? What we want is, we want that if we add a new repository, we should be able to change it very easily. A good architecture. What is a good architecture? A good architecture is that architecture wherein when you make a change at one place, the changes should be reflected in all the places easily and seamlessly. You don't have to work too hard. You don't have to go change here, change that, change that. If you're changing at too many places, that means that there is some problem with the architecture, right? So that means that because this new keyword, now remember what the interviewer wants to hear, because this new keyword is scattered all across, we are having a tight coupling, right? So that means that if we go and if we centralize this new keyword, so basically we'll say that okay, this repository here and this repository there, right? So in all these places we'll say no, we will not write the new keyword out here, we will delegate that work to a factory. So the factory class looks something like this, where you can see that okay, and you can see that I've just made it a bit parameterized. Remember that this is a very, very simple factory. I can see that many people saying, oh, like look at that hard coding and so on. Definitely, when you're saying that you want to go and create a good factory, then the way it should be is that you should be using something like you should be using some kind of a container out here, some kind of container injection, but at this moment I just made it simple. So what I've done out here is I'm saying that okay, what is the type, and depending on the type he will create an ADO customer and an EF customer. Now tomorrow if I want to add a new type, I will just change over here, that's it. I will just change over here and it will go to all the other places, right? So basically remember this example, I've used MVC core out here. So in case you are new to MVC core, please watch the videos. So basically what you will do out here is, over here you can see the factory is out here. Okay, so you are saying okay, factory, create a customer. Now this 0, it will create entity framework, 1 will create ADO.NET, right? So he will take this repository instance and he will say here, remember now this is a feature of MVC, right? Wherein we say services.add scope, and I'm saying that wherever you find iRepository customer, wherever you find iRepository customer, inject ADO.NET instance or ADO.NET this one, right? Or if I say a 0, it will be entity framework. Now remember that all this 0 and 1 or whatever you decide as a parameter, you can put it into a config file. Okay, so now what will happen out here, if you see now, for example, I made it 0. So if I run this thing out here, it will go and it will inject out here. We'll come to injection, right? It will actually go and pass automatically. It will dependency inject out here the so we have said 0 means it will inject ADO customer, right? So let me run it. Let us see what happens. So there it is running. I have some errors out here. What is it? So this customer class is duplicate. Sorry for that. Right. In CQRS, I think I created a customer class out there, and that's what the problem is. So what I will do for now is I'll just make this as customer CQRS so that, right, so that I don't get that error. Sorry for that thing. Right. Okay. So let me run this. And this sample code I will give you as a download, but please note you have to go and share this video. Go and share this video. Once you share the video, put down the links. Remember, if you're sharing this video, I'm giving you 2-3 things. First, I'm giving you a C# interview question PDF. Second, I'm giving you an architecture interview question PDF. Third, I'm giving you this source code, right? So, so there it is. You can see the repository instance out here. It is showing that it is a ADO customer. Look at it. This is an ADO customer, right? And then all across it will inject ADO customer, right? And if I go and if I change that now, if I go and if I change over here to let's say 1, remember this change will not happen manually like this. You will actually go and do it from the configuration file. Then what will happen? He will inject entity framework repository. Look at this entity framework repository out there, right? So That's what the interviewer wants to hear. That once you centralize the new keyword, loosely coupled architecture is there, decoupled architecture is there, right? Change at one place and it will reflect to many places. When you get into a discussion of factory pattern, right? The discussion of factory pattern can never be complete, or I will say rather, factory pattern will never be complete without talking about dependency injection and inversion of control. So please note that you should be aware about dependency injection. I will just quickly talk about what is dependency injection. Dependency injection is nothing but, it is a mechanism, wherein we actually go and give this, we give the dependent objects in the constructor, and automatically the framework will inject it. So you see over here, this services.add scope. So we have a dependency injection framework inside MVC core. So this add scope, what it does is automatically it goes and he injects in this iRepository customer, whatever instance you have here, right? So please note over here that dependency injection is nothing but you are injecting the dependent objects. Now this home controller's dependent object is iRepository customer. There can be something else also, iLogger, right? So all those dependent objects you will inject via the via this, right? This is termed as dependency injection. There is one more thing out here which is discussed, is the inversion of control, IOC, inversion of control. Now remember, inversion of control is not a pattern. Please understand, in the interview, don't confuse between pattern and architecture pattern. Remember, there's a difference. There's a difference between design pattern, there's a difference between architecture pattern, and the difference between architecture style. This inversion of control is a principle. Principle is again a different thing, right? If you don't understand these differences, please go to the video down below, which is in the comments, right? There I've explained this concept of the differences between these three, right? Inversion of control means what? Inversion of control means you invert unnecessary work of yours to someone. For example, at this moment I'm a teacher. Example I'm just saying, right? So I'll say I'm a teacher and my work is to teach, right? So I don't want to get into for example, this example I'm saying, I don't want to get into washing clothes. I don't want to get into cooking food, right? So I'll say, okay, I'll give this responsibility to someone else, right? So inversion of control means you invert that unnecessary thing to someone else from a class, and the class focuses on his work. Remember, this is again the same synonymical thinking of SRP. Single responsibility principle of solid, right? So all these are connected up. Please understand, these are all synonyms. In different ages they have come up, right? So somebody says SRP, somebody says IOC, but they all converge, to create a decoupled architecture, or they converge to create a loosely coupled architecture. So if you see here, this home controller, I'm saying that why should I get into deciding that I have to inject an ADO customer, or I have to decide into getting an EF customer? I don't want to get into that, right? So he says that someone else will inject it, right? So that is the thinking, that is a principle. Remember, principle means just an idea. Now to implement that, what we have done, we have used dependency injection. So dependency injection is a way to implement inversion of control. Remember guys, all of these concepts, you have to be very clear in the interview when you're speaking, right? So remember, whenever factory pattern comes up, these two things will definitely be discussed, or at least the interviewer will expect that you should understand DI and IOC. But now let me talk about a secret out here about factory pattern, and please let me know, everyone out here, seniors or our developers out here who are watching this video, if this is true, right? Write down in the comments, yes Shiv, that is true, right? So a lot of people say that factory pattern is just centralizing the new keyword, right? That's what the answer is, and believe me, many of the interviewers accept this answer. But it is said, right, sometimes the mass opinion is not the right opinion, right? So at least in India, what I've found is that if you go to any interview out there and if you say, okay, factory pattern means centralizing the new keyword, yeah, wohi hoga, so everybody agrees to that. So that looks like a right answer, but actually it is not right answer. So in case if sometimes you come across an interviewer who is a super smart person, right, then you have to know the real factory pattern. Now remember that the real factory pattern is out of scope of this video at this moment, and I'll tell you why the factory pattern what we discussed now is not the real factory pattern. You can say that is just centralizing the new keyword. That is polymorphism. That is simple factory, but that is not the factory pattern. A factory pattern of gang of four, what does it say? right? And you can check out in the Google out there. You can see what does it say. A factory pattern says the following, whatever in the Gang of 4, the definition, factory pattern is that. It says that it defines an interface or an abstract class or an parent class for creating an object, but let the subclasses decide which class to instantiate. Look at this. You can see on my screen. Defines an interface for creating an object, but let the subclasses decide which class to instantiate. Now you can see from the definition, he's talking about subclasses, he's talking about inheritance, he's talking about delegation, right? And definitely this code out here does nothing like that, right? So first thing is, guys, remember that whenever you're going for the interview, right, whatever definition I've said first, I think it's the right, it's not the right definition, but it is the most approved definition. Please go with that, right? Because if you try to give this answer, I don't know how many interviewers will select you, right? But here it is. If someone out there who understands design pattern, he can tell you, no, tell me the real factory pattern. Then you have to know the real factory pattern, right? So the real factory pattern, I would suggest to go and watch the video of factory pattern. So basically, people who are interested to know factory pattern, you can go and you can watch the design pattern videos out there. Remember, guys, what is the best way to prepare for the interview? Interview questions, step by step. Interview questions, hands-on. It should be a combination of both, right? So if you see this, in this design pattern section, I have this factory pattern and abstract factory pattern, and I'm so proud about this video. I never say that I'm proud about a video until I think that it's a great video, right? This video is approximately a 1.5 hours of video. And in this, I've explained the real factory pattern of Gang of 4. So you can see that there are almost 20 chapters out there, like define an interface, create a base class, create a subclass. So whatever that Gang of 4 is saying, right, I have explained everything out here. So people who are members out there, remember that you can get my course from Udemy, you can get my course from questmont.com, you can get my courses from, you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, right, the internal one membership, right, and you can get this design pattern course out there. I would suggest to go and watch that. At this moment, guys, it is very difficult in this video to talk about it, right? So these are the 4 or 5 questions about factory pattern. Remember, what is factory pattern? Centralized object creation. But also remember that if you get some Sawashare who understands what is real factory pattern, then you need to dig deep into it, right? He would be very interested to understand that, do you understand what is the importance and the implication of centralizing the new keyword? And the most important thing you would like to hear is loose coupling, right? And yes, this can trigger other questions around dependency injection and inversion of control. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this almost 1 hour of video. And I hope that you must have enjoyed this video. Remember, as I've already said, I have 3 gifts for you, right? And if you go and if you share this video, you will get all the 3 gifts out there. And please note, don't forget to watch my architecture interview question course. Down below on the link, I have pasted my architecture interview question course. Please go and watch that. Also, go to questmont.com. I have recorded so many interview questions, so many step by step, right? I'm sure as a candidate or as a developer, it will help you to go to the next level. So I have C# interview questions, SQL Server interview questions, ASP. interview question, architecture interview question, Angular interview questions, and interview questions, and interview questions, right? So please go and watch them. So a very, very happy Engineers Day again. Happy learning, happy job hunting. Thank you.